Hello again, welcome to PL Seasons to Remember. On today's show, we're going to be talking about money in football, and as ever, I'm joined by T. Evening, T.
Evening.
Today we're going to discuss, like I said, money in football. But before we start, big thank you to everybody that's been watching our content over the last couple of weeks. And please carry on watching it. As I said, give us some shares and some comments. And if there's anything that you are interested in us having a look at, then please feel free to let us know, and then we'll accommodate as best we can. On to the show today. T, if you want to start with what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so we're just going to have a brief discussion about the money in football and how it's changed over the years, and some of the notable big changes that's come about as a result of it. So, like clubs being taken over, how that's changed, like the dynamic in leagues around the world, and also touching on some sort of controversial ownerships, which obviously is all money related. And then a quick look on some transfers and how that's changed over the years as well.
Cool. Yeah. So T, have you? I think you've got a list of transfers. We'll have a look through.
Yeah. So just to start off, obviously everyone knows the record transfer fee was paid in 2017 for Neymar for 198 million from Barcelona to PSG, which obviously is an astronomical amount of money. And I mean, going back a few years, then that's sort of the money that you'd be buying football clubs for. Never mind it's one player. I mean, what were your sort of immediate reaction, Dougie, when to that transfer?
I think it's one of them 198 million. You sort of look, I think the world's gone mad with like that. And as you said, clubs are bought for less than that. And it's a lot of money, and especially because PSG, as I said, are owned by from a Saudi background, aren't they? Owned by pretty much by a country, really.
Qatar,
sorry. They're pretty much owned by a country, really, and they can do that. 198 million is a lot of money, especially for Neymar. I think it's not the best of leagues, and I think at the moment there's talks of Neymar trying to get out of PSG, so it was a bit of a waste of money. And 198 million, because they're not going to get that back.
No, I think it'll still come on quite a sizable fee because he is still a world-class player, and he can do things that other players can't. But I think PSG bought him with the whole idea of going after the Champions League, and it's just not really worked out for them. I don't know. There always seems to me to be a bit of a toxic sort of background, or you can sort of sometimes feel it in the club that there were always the rumours about Cavani and Neymar and big personalities, Mbappe as well joining there. So I felt like rather than them coming together, if you look at teams like Liverpool who have got big stars, but they're managed by Jurgen Klopp, who's managed to sort of get them cohesive together, so they're not like no one's focusing. You don't hear anything like Mane or Salah sort of shouting about themselves. It's but if you look at PSG, it's all about I want to take penalties. I'm going to do this, and just thinking of themselves as an individual above the collective group, really. But yeah, I mean, just also on transfers. I mean, it's quite striking how you see over the years, like Coutinho was sold for like more than 100 million, and if you look back around about sort of early 2000s, obviously Zinedine Zidane went for what was a record fee at the time, which was 46 million, which that what would that get you today? It would probably wouldn't even get you an English fullback.
No.
So
it's absolutely crazy to think. I mean, we were looking, and we'll probably go into more podcasts, like you said about Zidane, 40 million. I mean, it was 12 million, if I'm right, from Monaco. 12 million. I mean, you think, what would Henry and Zidane be worth now?
Yeah.
You know, if you think,
Yeah.
for you know, Coutinho's worth 100 and something million. How much would Zidane be now? So,
Yeah.
you know, he could be 200 million, the same as Neymar. So,
Yeah.
I think when does it stop? That's the thing. You know,
Yeah.
when does it stop that? I mean, like you were saying about PSG, because there's that many huge names in that football club. Now, I know Unai Emery was manager there and pretty much lost his job really because he couldn't handle the players in some ways. The players
Yeah.
sort of club, and that's when when people are on that much amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you look at that's a good point, and I mean, just like you say, where does it stop? If you look at again going back to like the early 90s, you had your Alan Shearer's going for 3.5 million, which at the time was a lot of money, and then as you gradually go on, early 2000s, and you've got the larger fees like for your Zidane's and Luis Figo. And then obviously like Rio Ferdinand, Wayne Rooney, and it was always around going up and up and up. About a standard figure for like a top player was always seemed to be about 30 million, and that seemed to be for a while. It seems like if you paid 30 or north of 30 million, then you were getting a damn good player. But now it seems that if you want to get a player in the top bracket, then you're looking at around 70 or 60, 70 million. And if you're looking at that top world class, I mean, if you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, obviously is a outstanding player, probably one of the best ever. But Juventus, they still paid more for him than what Real Madrid paid for him when he was in his prime.
It's incredible, and wages alone. The wages.
Yeah.
But the thing with Cristiano is when he signed for Real Madrid, he signed for a lot of money. For his age, he spent for a lot of money.
Yeah.
What they sold in shirt sales,
he
tripled that transfer.
Yeah, and that's probably like even more so probably with Juventus. Like they were probably happy to pay that much because they knew the investment that they were going to make and the merchandise that they'll get, like you say, on the back of it.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of times they look at that as well. How much merchandise we can get for the club that he can bring for such a massive name, and he can do just that really. But like you're saying about transfer fees now going up, I mean, you can take a player in the Premier League, and if we're in the top 6, and you could probably add 20 to 30 million onto their normal price now.
Yeah.
If they've got money, if a club's got money,
that plays a part as well. And I think as well, especially in the Premier League, the English players are sought after. The ones who play for the national team, that adds an extra percentage onto the transfer fee again. If you only have to look at people like Kyle Walker, when they're moving between clubs in the Premier League, and they command an astronomical figure.
It's absolutely mad. Have you got any more there, T?
Just looking really, I don't think there's any others that really stand out. Really, I think they're I mean, Real Madrid sort of when they bought Cristiano Ronaldo, they bought Kaká in the same window. I remember they broke the record twice, didn't they? They bought 56 million for Kaká, and then they got Ronaldo as well. In the same window, so that just sort of shows you a bit of a change in the game. But yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the sort of top 10 transfer fees paid, and they're all recent. You've got Mbappe, João Felix, Griezmann, Coutinho, Dembele. It's all most recent where these fees have just jumped up. And these are all, you're looking at around about 100. Well, they're all in the around about the 100 million or just under. So, like I say, top bracket, especially if they've got lots of years ahead of them, like João Felix, for example, then you're paying for the future as well, aren't you? So, but it's a big investment, I think.
Absolutely, and I think it's a big investment. But then if they don't turn out as
Yeah.
well as you think they're going to do, then it's a massive loss, really.
Yeah.
If you're going to give money to buy them, and that's
Yeah.
the thing about when you
I think
pick the prices.
Yeah, I think you on the other side of the coin, there you've got your teams like Real Madrid who are always paying these massive figures to bring these Galacticos in, like what they pay for Eden Hazard just a couple of years back. But then if you look on the other side of the coin, you've got teams like Dortmund who always seem to get these big players and then they end up selling them for a large fee, like your Aubameyang, and then you've got. Now look at the team now that some would argue that they're probably in a better state now than what there was when they had like Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan, and that's done by sensible investment in players working on scouting and finding those hidden gems and that's and keeping the price down so it can be done. You can stay competitive without having to pay those fees, but obviously you're then relying on great scouting and coaching as well.
Do you think that Germany are very good at this? Because if you look at the likes of Jadon Sancho, who was at Man City, and then sold for very little price to Dortmund, you look at Reece Nelson from Arsenal going abroad as well, and they're sort of making the name for themselves over there and actually promoting English youth, really, what we should be doing in the country, and then they're going off to Germany and going abroad. Having careers over there and making names for themselves up there. Why are we not doing that over here?
I can't really answer that, to be honest. I mean, I've been watching a bit of the Bundesliga obviously recently, and I think it's clear that these young players, just if you even look back at like Kevin De Bruyne when he went over there with Wolfsburg, he lit it up and he got so many assists and goals, and I don't know whether it's about maybe there's a drop in quality there, but I think between a bigger, by meaning a drop in quality, I mean a bigger gap between the top teams to the smaller teams, if you like. But I just think too many of the big clubs in the Premier League don't seem to be putting all they've got a lot of them there. You've got Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, have all got good young players coming through. Phil Foden. You tell me if Phil Foden played for something like Borussia Dortmund, he'd start every week. And that's the difference. Look at Serge Gnabry.
Do you think he's going to have to move on, Phil Foden? Do you think he's going to have to move if he wants regular football?
Well, I think he's. It's been said that he's like the hair for David Silva when he moves on. I think he's expected to move on at the end of this season.
Yeah.
But then the thing with City is they've always got that ability to go out and buy these, top names in that position. I mean, I've just been watching, Kai Havertz in Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, all the top clubs. I imagine they'll end up going to Bayern, but a lot of the top clubs will be, sniffing around him. And I mean, one example just there, like you said about young players, not just English players, young players that have been brought through Premier League academies, and then they've had a chance, but then they've gone over to there, and their careers just sort of, skyrocketing. And biggest example of that most recently is Serge Gnabry at Bayern. I mean, he's now a world-class star for Bayern, and starter for Bayern, starter for Germany, gets goals by the bucket load, and he's just the real deal. And what Arsenal would give for, I mean, I know more than most what we'd give to have, Gnabry on the wing for us now. But that then shows you that, like you said, Germany do tend to be very good at that. You tend to get your Spanish clubs who tend to pay a bit more over the odds.
Yeah.
And that might tell you as well, like Germany always tend to be successful as well in the international tournaments, that, that they can find these real, gems of players. Within their own academies and their own youth.
I think you also look as well with the German youth, and you think of people that have been brought up in German football. So you look at people like Lewandowski, who is probably one of the best strikers in Germany, but never among the best in the world for some strange reason. Yeah. never been. I don't think he's ever been up for like a Ballon d'Or thing. To my knowledge,
No.
I mean, you look at people like Philip Lahm, who spent his whole career in Germany, never went to Spain. You know, you sort of think these grown talents have grown up in Germany, not moved on to pastures new to go to different countries and just stayed there. Like you said, maybe that's why they're so damn good internationally, because everyone.
Yeah, and they've got that longevity, haven't they? So like Philip Lahm were around for a solid 10 years at the top, as probably one of the best fullbacks around, and he was just someone that they'd plucked out from the youth. So it shows you it can be done, and I think more recently the Premier League's been better at it. I mean, if you look at players like Callum Hudson-Odoi, you've got obviously more. I know he's a star now, but Harry Kane, was one of those that was found, and he was a young talent at the time. But and then obviously you've got Arsenal have got a good crop coming through with Eddie Nketiah and Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, but he obviously was scouted. It's not all about the homegrown ones; it's about going out and finding these hidden gems, and that's what you rely on your scouting network for.
Absolutely. I mean, like from a Liverpool point of view, we've got Joe Gomez, we've got from Charlton, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's come through the youth.
Yeah.
We're getting, a young full of talent, and that's what you want to see. You want to see this young talent.
But I think a lot of, like you said, going back to what you said about PSG and Man City, and they're pretty much backed by a country, probably soon to be Newcastle. They don't have to really worry too much about the scouting these young talent, because they'll end up buying them anyway. But to stay competitive, the classic teams who are, the teams who just can't compete with that spending power, they've got to be on with the scouting and the finding these hidden talents, because obviously they are out there, and you just got to do the work to get them, because now more than ever, because you're not, once they've gotten to that stage and they're recognised as a world class talent, and you just won't be in the conversation.
It's that's the crazy thing about football at the moment. There's just especially for the teams that have got massive budgets, it makes it difficult for a lot of teams to compete. Have you got any more? Or do you want to move on?
I mean, just my last point on that is just, I think with everything that's going on in the world right now, it'll be interesting to see what impact that has on the sort of transfer fees, whether that'll mean that they'll lessen, or I've heard rumours that there'll be more swap deals of players done between clubs. I know there were talk of Barcelona and Juventus doing a swap for, I think it's Nelson Semedo. So I think there'll be a lot more of that sort of thing going. That's what's been rumoured anyway. But a lot of clubs just won't have the cash, there to be able to just go out and splash the money like they did before. There'll be a lot of getting your house in order first.
Yeah, I think Sky Sports should stop deadline day for the transfer window. They'll finish it one day on it, because they'll be not. But that's it. I mean, who's going to have the funds now? Because they've had no funds, anything coming through over the last 8 weeks.
Yeah,
and everyone now should be done and dusted now, ready for the Euros, and then everyone thinking about who they're going to buy, and now it's like we're still stuck in the.
I mean, a lot of the clubs, if you look at Arsenal, obviously they got I think it was a 12.5% pay cut that they agreed, and I think some other clubs have agreed it with for the pay cuts as well. It doesn't really look good if you're then sort of saying, "Oh, we'll do a pay cut," and then as soon as it all comes back, they're then spending large amount of money on players. So it'll be a bit of a sensitive issue, I think, when they do return to normal, how teams approach it for a while.
Just speaking on Arsenal, T, what do you think to this 12.5 pay cut? Now, there was a lot of talk that there's 2 to 3 Arsenal players that were umming and ahhing about giving this 12.5% pay cut. I think Mesut Ozil has been very much criticised for this particular subject. Mesut Ozil said that he wanted to see where the money was going. Now, I agree in some way. I understand what he means, but I also think if you're a highest earning player at the club, you should then take the leap and go first and do it. But is it just going to go into the hands of the Cronkies, or are they going to invest it into the club? And that's that issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I agree really. I think I saw this same conversation on Sky Sports, and Roy Keane were very much on the players' side, especially for those on the, you know, who play for the top clubs who were these billionaire owners. Fair enough. If you want to take a pay cut, and it's obviously for a good cause, and it's to keep, you know, people, you know, people who aren't the playing staff, so, you know, all the staff, everybody, all the employees employed by Arsenal, to keep them in their jobs. It's great that they've been able to make that agreement, but obviously when you sign your contract, you're contracted to get that money, and that's why there's no obligation. I think if you want to do it, it's, you know, let's do it, but they shouldn't really feel forced to do it. And I think there was talk of that Arsenal's will be sort of put into like a pot, and if they achieve certain goals such as Champions League qualification, then they'll get that back, which again doesn't seem quite right to me, because what if they don't get that? Yeah, I mean, so that at the end of the day, you know, although the people argue the money that they get are, you know, is high, and they're not really going to miss probably 12.5%. It's good. It's going to, you know, it's still a matter of that they've signed a contract. The club's agreed to pay them this amount of money. So, you know, the players I'm pretty much more on the players' side, I think, with that. I don't think I'd criticise anyone for not taking it, because it might not, you know, it might not work for everybody for whatever reason.
And as you said, there's teams that can't afford to take pay cuts. There's players that can't afford to take pay cuts, and I think that's another thing about money in football at the moment, where you're looking. Hence why we're doing this today, is the bigger teams in the Premier League. Okay, they'll struggle for a bit because they're not getting what they would normally get. But then you've got clubs further down the league who are expected to do exactly the same as the clubs above, but they can't do it. So it makes it more difficult. Sort of coming on to a couple of the things we were going to talk about tonight, is we're going to go back and look at some ownership, some different clubs, and to see exactly what's been bought at some stage, and we'll have a conversation about, you know, players and how much people would spend, and what would they go for today's market. Would they think they paid too much? So, like I said, we'll start with Chelsea. Now, we do have a show coming up where we're going to be talking to Bob about Chelsea, so I won't go into a lot of detail regarding the manager side of things. But yeah, so Tia, just to get your advice on this one. So back in July 2003, Kembe sold to Roman Abramovich for £140 million. Ranieri was then given over 100 million to spend on players. I won't give you all the players that he signed, but in the season under Ranieri, he spent £121.3 million on players like Makalele, who cost 16.6 million, Hernan Crespo, 16.8 million. Veron was a massive blow on the side for him in his career in the Premier League, was £15 million from Man United. Scott Parker was a young lad, £10.10 million. Glenn Johnson started it all off with £6 million. So T just chucked a few names out there. Adrian Mutu as well, which was a big problem when he was at Chelsea. There's a lot of problems off there. And that was 15.8. What do you think there, T? on a couple of them names. 6.6 million.
Yeah, I think what people don't really, I think the early years after Chelsea's takeover, a lot of people, put that success to Mourinho, which obviously, he was a major part of the success at the time. But I think some of the names you've read out there were mainstays of the Chelsea team for years to come, who won so many trophies and were part of that. Like I say, Makelele, Joe Cole, even Glenn Johnson were part of it for a while. So yeah, I think sometimes Ranieri didn't really get his sort of credit for that, and I remember at the time Ranieri when he was sacked, I think it were a little bit hard to just finish second in the league. They'd had good run in the Champions League, but I just think with all these takeovers, you're not going to get immediate success, and I think we saw obviously jumping ahead a little bit, but if you compare with Man City, they had to wait quite a few years to get to reap the the rewards, whereas it seemed Abramovich at the time wanted immediate success, and that's why the pinpointing Mourinho was he was the man at the time. He was the top coach. Everybody everybody loved him, and it was the new thing. You'd had your Ferguson and Wenger for so long, and then you had somebody who had that charisma as well. And I think that's why Abramovich might quickly ushered Ranieri out of the door to get his man in, really. Which obviously we'll touch on the managers, like you said, with Bob, but it did ultimately bring them success.
Yeah, it did. It did. I mean, sorry, I didn't mention Damien Duff as well, which is another player that was 17 million that was in that the first title-winning season under Mourinho.
Yeah. A large fee for Duff as well, I remember. It
was a very large fee, yeah. But yeah, that was £121.3 million was spent by Ranieri. A little bit less when Mourinho took over, of £92.2 million, and still a lot of money. A check was signed for £7 million. Paulo Ferreira was £13.2 million. Ian Robben was 12 million, Didier Drogba was 24 million, and Ricardo Carvalho was 20 million. So you add them to already a decent enough squad.
Yeah.
With Mourinho coming from Porto after his Champions League heroics, and then the special one, then made a special team at Chelsea, and then ended up winning the league. Now, looking at what he spent under Ranieri, and then I said the first season of Mourinho, so it's not as much, it's less players. What do you think the difference was then with the Mourinho signings compared to Ranieri's signing?
I think a lot of them, I remember Mourinho got a lot of his Porto players in, so players who have obviously shown a certain level. And I think some of them signings in there, if you look at like Peter Cech for $7 million, that's a great bit of business.
Steal, really.
What's that? Sorry. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Big we've had since then.
Yeah. So I think it's quite hard to say who got it better, but I think maybe Mourinho had that pull really that he were able to get. Some of these players who were top players at the time, and like we've touched on about how money's changed in the game, going out and spending two lots of 24 million, 20 million in the same window is that at the time it was seen as they were making waves, Chelsea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he just got his recruitment right, and he knew who he wanted. He had a good base there. Ranieri laid some good foundations. He just got who he needed, and they just hit it off from there, didn't they?
They do, and I mean, sort of when we go back and look at the times when Mourinho first came in and when Chelsea won the title, and then there was a lot of things of, well, Chelsea bought the league and they've done this and done that. But as you sort of look at that first season, T, and you look at £92.2 million, and for what they bought now, I mean, people might disagree, but I didn't really know half of the players he bought. It's not like nowadays where players already world class,
already world stars. Yeah.
So I think credit to Mourinho really that it don't look right. Like it does when you count up actually how much they spent altogether, but he made them players, and and they were there. I said for as long as Mourinho was when Mourinho's come back and forth to Chelsea, but it doesn't seem that much really now, does it? Looking at the market nowadays, that doesn't seem that much, does it?
No, it'd be seen as good business. I think Aston Villa almost paid that much. This summer. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were almost at the 100 million mark when they've been promoted, and look like the 19th in the league. So it just shows you that they're how money's changed. But like you said, that's a good point. A lot of them players weren't really household names, and you've got to give them credit for that. I think the main thing is just that the sort of landscape in football changed. Obviously, Chelsea were a big team, and they were always sort of there or thereabouts in the top six sort of positions, and got to the old FA Cup final. But I think the takeover was just the next the kick that they needed to get to the next level, and ever since they're now recognised as one of, if you think of Premier League, you think of teams like Chelsea, and before people had just thought of Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, and they've got the name out there, and fair play to them. But I think a lot of people might have that feeling of that they've bought their way into it. But I think it was just because they had the ability to then go out and do that every summer, and spend. I think that's why maybe people got them back up a little bit at the time. Yeah. No one likes new kids on the block, do they, really? And I think that might have been part of it as well.
Like I said, the year after they then spent 54.2 million. 08-09, 24.2, 11-12, 71.55, 06-7, million, 09, 21.5, 2012-13, 86.5, 07-08, 50.5, and then they spent the most they'd ever spent then in 10-11 with 95.8 million pounds. I think that was when they got Torres, and is in then. It might have been De Bruyne as well. So it's been up and down, hasn't it, really, looking at it? They've spent a bit, not spent a bit, but I think Abramovich did say that he wouldn't be able to do it consistently spending every year. And you can see it has fluctuated sometimes and gone up again.
Yeah, I think there's been a definite change of attitude from Abramovich and Chelsea in their approach to the transfer market. And I think over the last few years, especially what I've recognised is that they've been one of the most sort of efficient teams, if you like, in terms of buying and selling. And they've always said over recent years, they've always managed great return fees on these players. So they get might spend a lot of money on getting them in, but then it seems like they've maybe it's because of financial fair play or whatever, but they've been by the book with that whatever they've bought, it tends to be as a result of what they've sold. So if you look at they've bought Kepa or Arrizabalaga for a lot of money, for 70 odd million for a goalkeeper, but that summer they'd already sold Courtois. So again, it was like balancing the books. It wasn't like they were just getting the money from the sugar daddy owner as they would have been before.
Yeah, and it's like they've been. Sorry, I think it was a bit of technical difficulties there. I think with you look at Frank Lampard now being the job and the transfer ban not happening, transfer ban happening, and then having to literally go buy youth then, and then literally come away from what they have been doing in buying players to now not buying players and having to bring your likes of your Mason Mounts and your Tammy Abrahams up the doors, and then having to do that now. And I think they're respected a lot more now, Chelsea, under Frank. In my opinion, that they're not just, they can't go out and buy now, so they're having to then go with youth. And then
they were always saying that they didn't really give a chance to the young players, and Chelsea have always had a very good youth team. So they've always had, you always hear of them winning the FA Youth Cup. Always very, very strong in the Premier League 2 or whatever it's called. With the reserves and everything. So definitely it's been a change of attitude, but it's in a way it's been forced on them a bit. But if you look at them now, they've got some cracking players, and you've had Bayern sniffing at Hudson-Odoi. That's another, going back to what we said before. Would he be somebody who, if he did go to Germany, he'd set it alight there, which I probably would think he would.
Probably would.
Yeah.
But like I said, we will touch on a lot more Chelsea stuff with the podcast when Bob returns with us. So we'll probably touch on a lot more Chelsea stuff. So next, talk about Man City, who again are massive spenders since they were taken over by Sheikh Mansour in 2008. They were bought for 210 million. And like I said, they've spent a lot of money over the years, preferably more now under Pep. Under the last 2 seasons under Pep Guardiola, they spent £165 million, and the season before they spent £268 million. So I'll give you a few names and prices. So when Pep first came in, he signed John Stones for 47.5 million. He signed Leroy Sané for 35 million, Gabriel Jesus for 28 million, and Gundogan for 24 million. The season after, he spent £53 million on Kyle Walker. He spent £52 million on Mendy, £43.5 million on Bernardo Silva, £35 million on Edison, £26.5 million on Danilo, £58 million on Laporte. Now, if that's not buying your way to try and get a title, I know we look at what we just said, Mourinho and everything like that, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think Man City have been, whereas with Chelsea, maybe it was a bit of more of a gradual. And looking back on there, it shocked me a little bit to see, they never really, the amounts that they spent weren't really, going above like 100 million for a couple of years. But with Man City, I mean, it happened as soon as they were taken over in 2008. I remember, obviously, that's probably one of the best deadline days that I've ever watched. When Man City just came into it and they got Robinho. There were talk of them trying to get Berbatov from under Manchester United's nose, and it was just out of nowhere. It was almost felt like they were taken over that day, got the funds, and then they were going straight out there, like on a shopping spree, basically.
They want it really.
Yeah, and it was just like I said, they didn't get the immediate results. Going back to what I said earlier about, whereas Abramovich might have been wanting that immediate success. I think always with Man City, although they were paying, large sums from the beginning, I think the ownership and the board understood that it was going to take a few years of doing that to actually get to the top. And I think now they're in a situation where maybe they don't need to spend as much money because they've already made those foundations. And I know Pep coming in, he just, he wanted what he wanted, didn't he? He wanted top class in every position.
He did.
And that's what he's got now, yeah. I
mean, like, I've got to say that the best buy for me under what Man City have bought, I mean, you got Aguero back in 11-12, £38 million.
Yeah.
Is now City's all-time greatest goal scorer, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have made a lot more goals, but injuries have sort of played a part in for Aguero, sadly. But I mean, to say he's had loads of injuries, he still scores goals and goals and goals. I mean, then you look at wasting money on people like Mangala for 32 million, Wilfred Bonney for 25 million pounds. But then like your best one really is De Bruyne for 51 million pounds. You've got Raheem Sterling, who's a totally different player now under Pep Guardiola. And like pains me to say it, with him being at Liverpool, and when he was at Liverpool, there was always something about Sterling. You think, right, he'll kick on, but he needs the right guidance. Now, Brendan Rodgers was good because he gave him the platform, he gave him the stage to start his career. But he needed somebody who was going to take him to that next level. I mean, he's a totally different player now under Pep Guardiola.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it was just a change of scenery. But I think even when he left Liverpool for that amount of money, no one expected him to turn into what he is now as a world-class star.
He'll be triple now, won't he?
What's that? Sorry.
He'll be triple that now, won't he?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And the amount of goals is coming in with about 20 odd goals a season.
Yeah.
So they're getting the return on it, but I think a lot of it's gone down to the coaching that he's got over the years. But I think going back on what you said about what's probably been Manchester City's most successful or the biggest transfer really that they'll remember is, hands down, it's got to be Sergio Aguero. He's now, if you look back, a Premier League legend really. If you look back at the Premier League years, he's been doing it for a decade, scoring goals after goals. I think he's got the best goals to game ratio ever.
Incredible, isn't it?
So I think it's for 38 million, it's dropping the ocean for Man City, and they've made they've got people always talk Man City don't have the legends, and maybe it was it's come about because of the money, but people like Aguero, David Silva, these players have been around and they've seen multiple title wins. They can now look back on them players with fondness and they're players to actually talk about for years to come.
And they've stayed, and this is the thing, they've stayed through right at the beginning. It really started to get to this level where they are now. They've stayed, and
which I think at the beginning it wasn't the case, because you got Robinho, and then he was off. So a few of them, it all seemed great at the time, but maybe a few of them were impatient. Pardon me. But like you say, they've had crooks of stars and mainstays of the team for so long now that it just shows that they've had great staying power to actually be able to keep those players in, because after a while Aguero's probably spent the majority of his career there now. And obviously you always get your pulls of like Real Madrid and Barcelona, so it's been good for Man City to be able to keep hold of him all these years.
I mean, I totally agree when you say about the mainstays, because I think back when Mark Hughes was in charge, you sort of looking were people like Robinho who came. I think Joe came as well, didn't he? If you remember him too.
Yeah.
He came. Do you think he just sort of came for a big payday, do you think?
Oh, it was Robinho.
Hmm.
I think it was just because he came from Real Madrid, didn't he, at the time, and I think it was just maybe he wanted to be the main man, a bit similar to the Neymar thing. I know obviously PSG were a lot more established than what Man City were at the time, but maybe it was just the money that were chucked at him were just too good to turn down, which you find is a lot of the time you find that with South American players, that they a lot of them have gone to China, so maybe it was that, but I think just bringing that into like a bit more of a modern perspective, what I think will, if the Newcastle takeover all goes through successfully, I think the early years of that will probably be, resemble a bit more Manchester City, where instead of it being Mark Hughes, it's Steve Bruce, and he's pretty much in a bit of a poison chalice. And as soon as he's, as soon as they're installed as the owners, then they're probably going to want their man. They'll probably want a top class coach, someone who's known around the world, and it'll just be, probably only a matter of time, which I feel is harsh because I think Steve Bruce has done a great job at Newcastle.
He has. I think the Newcastle job was a very hard job, especially when they did have, and they still have Mike Ashley in charge until this completely goes. I mean, one chairman that we've looked about, chairmans pumping money into the clubs. Then you look at teams like Newcastle, which they live and breathe and eat football every single day of their lives up there. And really, for a club that size, should have this sort of thing now. I mean, you can't begrudge them, can you? Not to the extent they're going to have, but I think for someone to at least give them a chance, give them a fighting chance, instead of being down the bottom every single season. I agree. I think the only sort of problem I mean, Newcastle, like you say, are a massive footballing city. It's a one club city. And the fans deserve. I mean, the early Premier League years when they had Kevin Keegan and the infamous rant that he had. But I think at that time it must have been exciting times. At that point to be a Newcastle fan. Because although they didn't win too much, but they appeared in FA Cup final. They were pretty much the shooing for the league title, and then maybe Keegan cracking up sort of threw it away. But I just think the main sort of issue I have with it is, like I said, I don't begrudge Newcastle fans at all because they've been through so much, been relegated twice, and then coming back up. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster. But again, they've not really had anything to shout about. But as I said, the main issue is that again, the clubs who are trying to run sustainably, such as Liverpool, Arsenal, and I know obviously Liverpool are top of the pile at the moment, but they haven't really done that as a result of owner pumping money in. No.
Again, it's been although they spent lots of money. Again, if you look a bit more of the recent Chelsea model, it's been getting good money in for who you're selling and spending that money wisely, which has put Liverpool up there. But still, there's still a sustainable model. They can't go out and spend these figures that the Man City and and PSGs can pay because they don't have that money. They don't have that financial power. So like your teams like Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, it feels especially as an Arsenal fan, it feels like it will be knocked down another place because and ultimately because of money, which does feel a little bit wrong because I feel like obviously money is very important in football, but I feel that you should be sustainable and spend what you earn, which obviously is why the FFP is being brought in, which will probably make it a bit more difficult for Newcastle to get straight up there like Manchester City were, where they didn't really have those regulations at the time, so they were able to just go out and spend willy-nilly really. So
I think it's going to become more difficult now for people. Well, you would hope it'd become more people
that's
to go
what
out
it should. That's what I'd hope it's there for, basically.
So touching on to, we'll sort of come away from Man City. So I said you were speaking about Arsenal there. Sort of a bit behind the times really, with the likes of people wanting to buy Arsenal, people wanting to buy these clubs for such and such lots of money. But then you look at Arsenal and Stan Kroenke, who is the owner of Arsenal now. So Arsenal are a self-sustained model. which is they spend within their means, and that whatever the club makes, then that's where they get their transfer fees, I think, or everything from that. Whatever the Arsenal make, they use, as well as Stan Kroenke hasn't pumped any money into Arsenal. I mean, I watch Arsenal. You go. My sister has. You've put more money into Arsenal than he has, and he's the owner.
Yeah.
So and that's probably why Arsenal are behind now, because everybody's going out and they are spending money on big games because that's what they have to do. But Arsenal sometimes penny pinch or try to do loan deals when they have a man there who's a billionaire, probably richer than Abramovich, maybe. Why?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why does Stan Kroenke not spend any money on Arsenal? We'll touch on Arsenal again in later podcasts, but just while we're doing this, why do you think?
I think there's two sides of the coin. I think it's something to be proud of if you look at that they are a self-sustainable model, and they're able to stay, relatively competitive. Like in recent history, they've won trophies. Been Champions League. I know we haven't been in for 3 years now, but so I mean, there's that you get from it. But then you look around at, I mean, even Liverpool, like that, they've had investment from the owners. As I say, they've been very astute with what they've done with the buying and selling and the promoting youth, but also they have had backing from their owners. Now Arsenal, like you say, I haven't had a single penny in from Stan Kroenke, and I think the fans get a little bit restless, and I can't really answer why. I mean, it's always looked at that Arsenal are a bit of a cash cow for him, and he's thinking, I'm sitting, on a ranch in America, and I'm, this club's making me so much money. But I feel that the tide is changing a little bit on that, because Arsenal haven't been in the Champions League for 3 years now, going on 4 years. So that's a long time for a club like the size of Arsenal to not be at the the top table in Europe. Even though we haven't really, challenged it, still to be in that competition is, vital for you to be able to spend, the money that you want to spend to actually improve and get further up, the league table and be in contention for these top titles. But yeah, I think the time might come where he'll have to look at, investing, because it might not be making the money that it was before. And I know they've had the offers before, so you've had, I think even more, richer than some of the other, people that you mentioned there. That we had Alisher Usmanov on the board, or I don't think he had a place on the board, but it was he had a stake in the club. But he never let him have that input, and the money was there to be able to pump into the club, and he had great backing for Arsene Wenger, and I always said they were one of the best managers.
To his downfall, really, I think he was backed. Again, we've got content coming out about Arsenal and Arsene Wenger, but I mean, on the opposite side of the coin, as you said, an unpopular opinion would be Kroenke does have 10 teams he owns. So out of them 10 teams, one of them's not going to do it. One of them's going to lose money. Did I hear that he took a loan out, and then what he was taking from Arsenal was paying the loan? Now I don't know if that was true. I think I heard that somewhere. I don't know if you heard that.
I think I heard that potentially, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that. I wouldn't be able to tell you if, with any real certainty about the financial aspect of that. But I think it's something that's been rumoured, and again, it just adds to the sort of the feeling that Arsenal fans have against the Kroenkes, really. But I think if they were successful on the pitch and where they should be, then there won't really be that talk of it. But it all goes hand in hand. Like we've said on previous episodes, if things are right off the pitch, then generally it becomes right on the pitch as well.
I think to put a bit of fairness to Stan Kroenke and to Josh Kroenke is that it's not like Arsenal aren't buying anybody. I mean, they've signed Lacazette, they've signed Aubameyang, they've signed decent talent. So it's not like they're not.
So it's not like he's holding up the club's money, basically.
No,
yeah.
He's going out buying. It's just not in bulk. It's going up.
But I think that's expected though. You should be expected to spend the money that you make.
Yeah.
But so I just think that why it's become more of an issue recently is, again, the whole part of this episode, the changing of the guard in terms of the relevance of money in football, and Arsenal struggling to keep pace with these top teams who can spend, and I think that's why the fans are pinpointed the owners a bit more, really.
But just to sort of hop along to the other side of North London, to Tottenham.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel Levy is one of the best organisers in the Premier League, really, for what he does. They live between the means. I feel like they've just paid a new.
Yeah.
So my question is, so they got Kane and Ali, a lot of other players in the team.
Yeah.
Now, because he's not gone forward now. So right, I'm going to pump a bit of money in now, and then I'm going to get this team close to the top. They've had chances where they've been near the top and just lost out. Like I said, the Leicester season, and I said they've ended up finishing third that season. Do you think that I said I don't know how much what they have now of Spurs, but they need to push on really now and maybe spend a bit of money because Mourinho, as you've seen with his Chelsea team, does need money to get things going. Will he get that at Tottenham?
I don't think he will. I've always said this from the start. I don't think the money's there. If you look at, obviously they've moved stadium. They have paid some large fees recently. You look at what they paid for Ndombele, which was more than 60 million, and he's not really hit it off for them. Again, another these big signings don't always work, like you say. But I think the main thing for Tottenham is I do think they've missed the boat in some aspects because they've had that great team that's people always say that they achieved so much, but they didn't really achieve anything. So it's that time has passed, and now if you look at people like Harry Kane, I think Harry Kane and Dele Alli as well have lost a lot of the value that they had. I remember at the time when they were in the prime a couple of years back. Well, obviously they are still in the prime in their careers, but when they were really, if you looked at them, you thought, you wouldn't want to be facing. You know what I mean about when a player is at the top of his game, because there's definitely been a drop off in Dele Alli, and I think Harry Kane's become more injury prone. So if you're looking at Tottenham moving stadium, spending all that outlay on that, and then if they did need to cash in on any of these players, then they are losing value. But I don't think, I don't think Daniel Levy will look at it that way. I don't think he'll be thinking, I'm going to have to sell these players. They've been getting Champions League football, but at the moment, as where they are in the league, it doesn't look as nailed on for them to finish in the Champions League place for next season. If we're looking at resuming, it looks an uphill task for Arsenal and Tottenham to get into the Champions League places. So that will, I think Arsenal at the time always managed on a bit of a shoestring to keep, and this were a bit of the genius of Arsene Wenger to keep Arsenal in the Champions League for so long when the club needed it at that time when they moved to the Emirates Stadium. If Tottenham moved to this stadium and then they straight out of the Champions League the season after, it's going to have an impact on finances, which is then going to impact what they can spend on players to actually get where they want to be. So I think it's a tricky time for Tottenham, and I don't think Mourinho will be getting what he's been used to, where he's had money to spend at pretty much all of his clubs, really.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think we said the genius of Arsene Wenger in the case of, Arsene Wenger. Okay, the last couple of seasons he was there. He's there. People will say, "Oh, he's finished now," but everyone would look back at the history of what Arsenal had won, like the Premier League cups. Well, what do you? Then you look at Tottenham, and then they don't have that. So, would you say keeping the likes of Dele Alli, Harry Kane, Lamela is probably the height of their success?
What success? No, I think it's had to say that there. I think I do think that Tottenham, when they had that team, that should have been when they won at least something. For whatever it's just becoming again. I go back to saying Newcastle coming in now. Some of these teams who are a bit more on a self-sustaining model, which Tottenham are as well, they're gonna find it harder to sort of stay up there because of how money has changed in football. I think it's going to be tough for Arsenal as well, and tough for Tottenham, and a lot of teams to sort of stay competitive, and a lot of it does go down to getting into the Champions League to be able to spend what you want to be spending and competing for these top players.
That said, a lot of times you look at it and money. That's the thing about money nowadays, is that money is so much involved in football now, where if you don't spend the right money, then you fall behind. And I think sadly for these two clubs at the moment, as if they are up there, they are battling, but they're not reaching their full potential. And I said, if you're paying, Arsenal pay massive ticket price. If you're paying prices for Harrods, but then you're getting Poundland style of footballers coming at some stage. No disrespect to some of the Arsenal players that come in, like your Aubameyangs, they're gems. But if you're going to pay a lot of money,
you want to see your team up there challenging for the top prizes, don't you? Yeah,
absolutely. So just to nearly finish up, we're going to go back in time now with Blackburn. Now, like I said, I don't really know a lot about this season. But I said earlier on, Blackburn spent a record fee of £3.5 million for Alan Shearer when he came from Southampton when Jack Walker took charge. And then in 94-95, they ended up winning the league. Yeah. Sort of then everything's looking rosy, everything's looking brilliant with Blackburn. I think then was it a couple of seasons later they got relegated. Yeah. And then being on a big low to 2010, they were taken over by VH Group. Is it the Venkies?
Venkies, yeah.
Took over for £23 million. They bought Blackburn. The first thing they did was sack Sam Allardyce and brought first team coach Steve Keane in. And that just went. If you think the Arsenal thing's bad with Stan Kroenke and the abuse Arsene Wenger used to get, dear me, Steve Keane got it in the neck, didn't he?
Yeah. And it went on for quite a while that it got quite sour. But again, it's just an example of bad ownership off the pitch impacting what happens on the pitch. And since then, Blackburn, I think they got what they paid for back in the time when they had Shearer, and they've got that Premier League, and no one can take that away from them. And again, that was although they had financial power at that time, that were a hard fought league. If you look back at Manchester United were the ones at the time who were sort of up and coming. So I think that's something for them to be proud of and look back on with fondness. But again, it's another example of bad ownership and not managing finances correctly to then negatively impact the club off the pitch, which is the main thing that the fans, that's why the fans look to turn against, because if they see things, it doesn't really matter a lot. If you think if a club's successful, they wouldn't really be looking too much at the owners. But it always tends to go hand in hand, and obviously they're in League One at the moment, so not great times for Blackburn.
No. So I think, T, if you've got anything else you want to add to anything that we spoke about tonight, or anything you want to bring up, feel free.
Just one nice thing to end on, really. What do you think has been the most? What do you think has been the most, the biggest, out of all the transfers? Who do you think has been the most notable in terms of what they've gone on to do, and how it's like worked out for that club and player?
Do you mean in the Premier League, or do you mean all around?
Yeah, we can say the Premier League. Yeah.
I'd say in the Premier League the most noticeable one would be Aguero for me. I think.
Yeah.
He's coming to a team where they've not won anything, and to do what he's done, to make City this an absolute farce. Yeah, okay, they've had a lot more players have come in, but he's done absolute wonders. The amount of goals he's scored, even when he's been injured a lot of the seasons, he's still scoring goals. So I'd probably say Aguero was, from a striking perspective, has been incredible. I think it's difficult to name so many.
It's hard to think about them, isn't it? Yeah. I think there's so many like that have sort of revolutionised English football. So you look at your Didier Drogba, Sergio Aguero, going back further, Thierry Henry. Although they're different, they all tended to be, small outlays. And even Aguero at 38 million, if you look at what they've got back for him, it seems like a small outlay for what they've had in return, really. So I think there's been definitely some coups from the English teams in the Premier League.
Absolutely. What would you say, T? What would you say yours was? Would you say?
I'd probably agree. I think I talked about it earlier, didn't I, about the Aguero. I don't think you can find better than that for the especially at the time, the money they spent. It's just worked out phenomenally well. The trophies that he's won, and he's, like I said before, he's cemented himself as a club legend and a Premier League legend now.
And as we all know, with big money signings and signings that come from other countries, it doesn't always work out.
No, it doesn't.
Absolute treat.
There's lots of examples, yeah.
Oh, a lot. But T, is that wrap it up for you?
Yeah, that's good discussion there. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, as ever, if you would like to add us on PL Seasons to Remember on Twitter and plseasonstoremember@gmail.com. As I said at the start of the programme, if you want us to talk about anything football-wise, or the Premier League or anything else, just drop us an email or send us a tweet, and we will look into organising that for you. And like I said, from everybody, from me and T, thank you, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's at PL Seasons.
Yeah.